I want to clarify some things that we've been learning. You've already kind of learned about demand and supply, so this is kind of really a review for you. But let's go ahead and go over it. The law of demand says that higher prices, consumers will purchase less of it. So you can see right here at point A, you'll see what I'm talking about. The law of demand says that at lower prices, at point B, consumers will buy more of it. You'll see that. That's the law of demand. We did that with pizza, if you remember. We said that if I lowered the price for pizza, you'd want more of it. But you're still in this market. You're still in the market for pizza. Even if I raise the price of pizza, you're still in the market for it. You like it. You just won't buy as much of it. That's the key to understanding that when demand actually changes. Over here, you see the law of supply. And the law of supply says that producers have the opposite way of thinking. It's just not worth it for them to produce at point B. So they produce very, very little of it at point B. If their price is low, they'll produce very little at quantity B. If the price is higher, though, producers are much more willing to produce, like right here at point A. They'll produce a lot more quantity right here at point A. So the law of supply simply says that producers will produce more of a product at a higher price and less of a product at a lower price. Now let's go down here. This is putting it all together. You see, the two of them can't have their way. So they meet at what we call a point called equilibrium. That is the most efficient price and the most efficient quantity. That's at point C. That is that price at which consumers and producers basically are efficient on the amount that they produce and the amount that they buy. Let's move over to the next graph. Now we get into the determinants of demand and supply. Now we're looking at things that actually shift a demand curve to the right or shift the demand curve to the left, like that. That's what we're talking about when we say determinants of demand. Things that will actually create more demand or create more supply or create less demand and less supply. In order for demand to be changed, this means that more people have to get into the market or more people are willing to buy more of it in the market, even though there is no price change. Price does not affect a shift when we're talking about demand, and price does not affect a shift when we're talking about supply. If you remember, the determinants of demand were consumer tastes and preferences. This meant that, well, if people just like it more, or maybe you've advertised it well, demand would shift to the right, like that. Therefore, at that particular that particular point, prices would actually go up to PL1, and quantity and the amount that we sell would go up too. That would be a new equilibrium point for us. That means demand has changed, and it could go the other way if people all of a sudden don't like your good or service for some reason. The number of consumers, if more consumers come into the market, well, then that will also shift demand. Also, income. If people have more money, it will shift demand to the right. If people have less money, it will shift demand to the left. Prices of related goods, peanut butter and jelly, talked about that being actual complementary goods. If the price of peanut butter goes up, well, the amount of jelly or the demand for jelly will go down. If we're talking about substitute goods, if the price of a Cooper tire goes down, well, the demand for a Goodyear will go up. Consumer expectations. If consumers are expecting bad things, well, they're obviously going to demand for a lot of things is going to shift to the left. For example, right now, the demand for cookies right now is not a big deal. People aren't, if anything, they're buying less cookies and more of other things that they need to have. Determinants of supply are also important. The determinants of supply are those things that actually shift a supply curve right or left. So looking at it right here, we're talking about those particular things that would take a supply curve and shift it to the right which would mean that we're supplying more, or shift it to the left, which would mean that we are supplying less. The kinds of things that can affect it would be technology. Better technology, we'd supply more. If we don't change our technology and everybody gets ahead of us, we'll supply less or it begins to break down. Cost of inputs, if the price of labor goes up, we'll supply less and you'll shift to the left. If the price of labor goes down, well, then we'll produce more because we can hire more people. If the price of, for example, oranges goes up, well, we'll supply less orange juice. If the supply of oranges goes down, we'll supply more orange juice. Cost of related goods, basically, what other things do I produce? If the price of producing those goes up, well, then I can't produce very much of this. So it's one of those this or that type of things. And businesses also react to expectations. And we're seeing that right now as this virus has come about. We're seeing that the businesses are trying to supply more. So they're trying to increase their supply in things like toilet paper, bottled water, things that we need. They're trying to increase their supply, not just to make money, but also to help out our country itself. Now let's look at the overall situation of what's going on right now. I've kind of drawn it up here. We're going to look at the market of toilet paper here because that seems to be your big focus. Okay? Here's your market of toilet paper. Notice here at price level E, quantity E, this was the equilibrium point that we started off with before all of this came about. Well, because of the fact that we are having basically a greater number of consumers, because people are in fear of not having toilet paper, they're beginning to buy more of the toilet paper, so there's more in consumption there. We're consuming it more. Because of expectations, consumer expectations, we can put that up here too. People are just getting ready for what may happen, so the demand for toilet paper went up. So if you notice, it shifted to the right here. You see this, it shifted to the right to, we'll call this point A, and we'll call this point B, to a new point, and that's called point B. Well, that's all well and good. But the problem was, if you remember, people were all talking about price gouging, and the government has come in and said, look, we're not going to allow for price gouging. You're not going to raise your prices for things that we need. Well, when the government does that kind of thing, they're putting what's called a price ceiling. It's not a good thing. Essentially, what it does not allow prices to do is go up. And most of the time, businesses are not price gouging. They're basically just trying to keep efficiency in the market. And you'll see why here in just a second. If you allow the price to go up to PL1, notice that we're meeting the expectations right here. Everything is being met. The problem is that we're not. We're not allowing this price to go up. So then what you see is that at this price, notice that we can keep going here. This area that we're kind of shading in right now is a shortage. Because the price is too low, people are buying a lot of it. The expectations are forcing people to, okay, well, the price is low, let me buy as much as I can of it. And it's becoming basically hoarded material to the point where people are overbuying, and therefore there's just not enough for everyone. If you let the price go up, you'll eliminate that. And essentially, if you allow the price to go up, people won't buy as much of it because they just won't have the money to buy as much of it. In other words, the price level should be able to go up in order to control the amount available for everyone. That's not what's happening here. We've created an intentional shortage by just allowing ourselves and our government to come in and say, no, we're not going to raise the price. And the city of Houston has said they want you to report businesses that are raising the price of toilet paper. Totally not appropriate in this particular situation. The big question was, well, then if we raise it to this price, what if rich people come in and they go off and they're the only ones that could buy it? Well, that's why you allow private businesses to come in and you say, okay, we're going to put a limit here. But that's private businesses doing that, saying, okay, you can only buy two or you can only buy three. Okay. If you did this, you probably could each of you buy four packages of toilet paper. It wouldn't matter because there would be plenty for everyone. But when governments come in and like the local government has come in here and said, look, we're not going to put up with raising prices during this particular period of time. Well, um, you're disabling the actual market from working and you're creating a shortage. And now people are going to be without. So this is essentially what we've been talking about. And hopefully you're kind of understanding it a little bit better. Understand too that producers have tried to increase supply. They have they've been trying to take care of this. They just can't, as they supply more with the price being here, the shortage just gets bigger and wider. So it's just not fixing it. They have the producers have done a good job of trying to get as much as they can. They have not decreased supply like you've heard on some places. That's silly. They've maintained their supply. Just people are, because of price, they're buying everything they can of it. Increasing, they've even increased supply of toilet paper. That hasn't worked to fix the shortage. So essentially, what has to happen is the price of toilet paper has to go up. Um, the other problem we're going to face here in the near future, if this continues to go, is that income will go down, and that will also bring demand to the left, and it will also fix some of that shortage. But that's not a good way of doing that. We don't want that to happen. As for now, if we could raise the price of toilet paper, allow it to raise up, I think some of our shortage could get fixed. If you allow for businesses to take care of this part of it, allow them to determine, how many they're willing to sell to each individual. They'll keep track of their stock. That's pretty well it on toilet paper. Hope you're enjoying. Hope you're enjoying your family. Take care. Bye.